Welcome back to another episode of Who Should You Choose, a video series where I go through the prior videos, questions, and comments and help you with your HUT lineup decisions. Today we are getting the playoff event, I would guess. Maybe it's not. I don't know. We're probably getting something revolving around the Stanley Cup. We obviously had the fantasy card drop, which we talked about in the last episode, which, in my opinion, was one of the best event releases they've done in a while. Let me say this. It's easily the best playoff oriented event they've done ever. So, again, we like to harp on the content team because, there has been a lot of questionable decisions, but the cards that they chose, like the players, as well as, giving every team the one representative and all of that was a pretty big W. And Matthew Nye scored again. So, congratulations to all my Matthew Nyes enjoyers out there because we got a 95 overall. I do want to mention I'm going away with my family for this weekend, so I won't have an event video up until Sunday. When I get back Sunday, first thing I'll do is I'll go down, take a look at the new content, and then try and update you guys as best as possible. Also heard a rumor that something cool might be getting dropped, but again, we'll have to wait and see on that. Anyways, let's get into yesterday's comments and questions. Also saw a lot of comments saying that you guys enjoyed this, who should you choose, essentially, which is now turned into 20 minutes of me yapping every day about Hockey Ultimate Team or whatever. And I appreciate that. I'm still getting a lot of views on it. I enjoy it. It's like therapy because, we're all addicted to this video game. So let's get into some of the most liked questions. Ben says, we had gameplay cards from the old content team with shot blocks and upgrades. So this is in response to me saying that next year I want to see them expand on the fantasy cards, where it's not just goals. It would be like if you were to put the one I use is Matt Rempe. Let's say he gets +1 overall for every 5 penalty minutes he gets. They can't promote fighting. EA won't. It's not an EA thing. It's the NHL. They do not like to promote fighting at all in that sense. That's why when you watch replays and things like that, you don't catch, from the NHL website, you don't get the fights and things like that. But you can get around that by 5 penalty minutes, right? Because it's like, oh, he takes a couple high sticking calls, things like that. He mentions we had game day cards with the old content team with shots, blocks, and with upgrades. I was talking about year-long ones because, the game day cards were kind of cool. Very rarely did they pop off a lot. I remember there was a John Tavares though. That legitimately went up by 9 over a few days span. That would be kind of cool. I would like to see something interesting here. You know how they're doing the weekly modes update or weekly mode cards where we got Nemesnikov last week, for example. And it's do all these objectives and you get an 88 Winnipeg Jet, right? And we had essentially one for every team throughout the year. What if that card, you drop it on a Monday, okay? Never mind. Monday night content. God, no. I wish the 3-day content. Say what you will. I'm not opposed to going back to the 5-day. I don't really think it matters. As long as the cards coming out are fantastic, because we had 5-day content, and as someone who has been breaking down all of the content in this game for the last 7 years, there were so many days where it's this is just nothing, right? But obviously, at least every day we get to look forward to something. Just move the Tuesday to Monday. How are you going to go from Friday, the weekend, and then Tuesday being it? Just move the Tuesday to Monday, make it Wednesday and Friday. It's just so much better. That being said, card drops on Monday, and it's Pacific Division pack, okay? And it's the one thing here would be every team would have to have the same amount of games, but it's you get a card, and then for the week, any shot block, it's for every 3 shot blocks, he goes up +1 overall. For every goal, he goes up by 2. For every assist, he goes up by 1. And you start him low enough where it's not going to break the game, but it's still interesting. There is the potential where it could. And that would be phenomenal, I think, because then it's a week long of checking out that player or that team. As opposed to just a card that half the time no one's going to use. But yeah, they did have the old game day cards. I would like to see them expand on stats for year-long fantasy items, because just goals, it's fine. I'll take that over anything else. but you're not rewarding assists, power play points. Like I'm trying to think of off the top of my Alex Ovechkin. He had 45 goals. Let's say he comes back again, okay? Do an Alex Ovechkin card where every time he scores a power play goal, okay, he goes up by 2, right? Or 1 even. Like, okay, like make it so that he starts at 82 overall or whatever. Right? So you again, I mentioned this in the last video. You can't break the game. Everyone wants the best cards at all times. When that happens, you get the warp speed event. Like you have to protect the player base. So there has to be some sort of guardrails in place because if you just end up with 99s everywhere, I promise you Hut will be demolished. So you have to have some sort of guardrail in place for it. But I think that would definitely be the best way. Clearly, if there is anything that we've learned from the content released this year, it's that the fantasy cards, they have been the best they've ever been. Not even close, right? So when you think back to the prior years, and you compare the old content team to this content team, yes, a lot of things and philosophies and ways that they did the content, I agree, were much better in the prior, content regime. That being said, this content team nailed the fantasy cards so far this year. So I think they need to lean into that more. But the danger is again, then that's all you care about, right? So there has to be ways to I don't know. One of my favorite quotes, I know I'm rambling here. One of my favorite quotes from Pirate Software, who I guess is not nearly as popular as he used to be because of the World of Warcraft thing. If you don't know who that is, he's a very big streamer, one of the biggest on Twitch, and he used to be a game developer for Blizzard for World of Warcraft. And one of the things that he talked about, and I mentioned this in one of my videos, is that when you have a meta, which we always have in every video game, all right, what you need to avoid as a game developer is to nerf the thing that is the meta and trying to buff another thing to meet it, right? Because what ends up happening is you nerf the good thing, you try and buff something else to meet it because you think you need to do both, and the other thing ends up overtaking it, and you're just going around and around and around. What needs to happen is you have the meta, and you need to bring everything else up to the meta. That's it. So I think that they need to find a way to improve fantasy cards and then also improve everything else. And I don't know if I'm smart enough to come up with that. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you would keep events relevant and team of the season and team of the year. Fantasy card upgrade based on more than goals. Also like the idea of a free one based on our favorite team. I 100% am with this. They did this a couple years ago where it was like the rookies. I remember Kalen Addison. You got a free pack and it was like all rookies and they started out really low. Really no chance to hit 99. 100% when the fantasy event comes out, you should be able to pick, like I mentioned in the last video, every team has a representative and all of their attributes are identical. That's how you get around that. Because I guarantee you what would end up happening is there's so many guys that are just so locked in that need to have the best cards and the best team so that they can get one more win in rivals and stay in the exact same division regardless. And if you just made the overalls the exact same and the attributes the exact same, boring, yes, but it evens the playing field for everyone when you have a choice pack of a fantasy item, right? Like, if I was a Sharks fan, give me Will Smith or William Macklin. A Macklin celebrating would be sick, but, and he's got, 85 stats across the board, all right? You've got the Ottawa Senators, give me an 80 overall or 85 overall Drake Batherson, right? And he goes up by +1 for every goal or whatever the stat is. And his attributes are identical across the board to all the other choices. That way, it's a better way to go about it. Hey, Slaves, I think the fantasy event was done perfectly this year. Multiple drops throughout the year were perfect. NHL 25 was the year of fantasy cards. Also, I think a way to make every card have value again would be to start at NHL 26 and have permanent sets that follow 3 cards at any overall for a card that is 2 overall higher. Start low and add sets throughout the year. Once a card gets higher, now an 83 to an 85 set until there are many 85s. Just progress it like they do with the Team of the Week sets. Permanent sets of 3 cards at any overall. See, I think you're talking about like the sets to make cards and things like that. I just think that they should scrap that. Go back to the collectible system. Like what we used to have in Hut Champs was perfect. That's a whole other argument. In Hut Champs, every win got you one more collectible. And then you had like 10 to 15 different options of what you could do with your collectibles. You could save them multiple weeks, whatever, right? That is how I think the best way to release content in this game. It's boring. and I think they wanted to try and spice things up. And I can admire the effort. It didn't. It landed very flat, and I think that clearly the best way would be have 83s turn into a collectible. You get an 84, that's two collectibles or a couple of them, so on and so forth, and then you use those collectibles to make items. Maze Joel. Well, what EA can do to make fantasy cards better is to maybe split up more. For example, the first 2 weeks, it's bona fide 40 goal scorers, for example. Matthews, Ovechkin, Draisaitl, Pasternak, Thompson to start at like 65 overall, since EVO is usually 2 weeks after the game release. So it's a year-long chase, and it's superstars in the NHL, and another 2-week event after the All-Star event with higher overalls, but maybe not superstars of the league that start at 85 overall, so they just need 14 goals. I think this is the issue with the fantasy event. It comes out very early in the year. You pay up front. It is one of the most expensive events of the year, and it's very early on. So they're doing this delicate dance of, okay, we want people to invest in the event, but we have to make sure that they cost a ton, because if they were the exact same price as all other events, like you'd be able to have an entire team of fantasy cards. You can't have that. That's, again, would brick the game, right? So I think what you do, the other issue is that most fantasy cards, and when I rank them, if you go back and watch the video, one of the big issues is that they have to be almost usable. Because if they're not usable and you're paying excessive amounts of resources early on in the game, that means you're paying a ton for a card you can't use for a while. If you're a Pens fan and you made Evgeny Malkin and it cost you 500,000 coins in value at the second week of the game, you didn't get to use that card all year. He couldn't make your lineup at launch, and that's a big issue. That's why cards like Garland and Casey Middlestad and even Parayko to an extent, all of those cards had decent skating at launch of the event, which made their floor much higher, right? And you can't have the superstars because the only way around that is you need to start them at 80 overall, but they go up +1 for every 2 goals. Right? Like, that's the only way for those. Because I think you should. There should have been an Ovechkin chase card. I still stand by that. At 85 overall, they should have made Ovechkin. Everyone got a fantasy card for free. And we just got to follow along the chase. I think they did a pretty good job with the Ovechkin release, with the hologram art and the moments that actually made sense and all of that. I actually think they handled that well. The timing with the team of the season was brutal. And then the actual time that you only had a week to make the card was absurd. Absurd. I do not understand that rationale, but I thought they did a pretty good job outside of those things. I think that one of the ways around it was, I don't know why, they like to give out free cards that are essentially just usable for the very niche team build, theme teams, or just stuff you can trade in. And it devalues it. They're so terrified to give away free cards that are very usable. And I don't know why. I don't know how it would limit income. Like, I'm trying to think as a business, like why you have 20 spots on your lineup. Why would one card that you get for free be detrimental to people spending money in the game? Because if anything, you're guaranteeing a free card. You know how many people hop back in for the Ovechkin moments and that were playing MLB, for example, and because they had to grind to get it, and maybe that's why. But then they're exhausted because they've had to spend 4 hours doing something they didn't want to do, and now they got Ovechkin, they don't want to play. Like, it would have been so much better to get, like, at 15 goals away, 85 overall fantasy item. Everyone got it. It was in the store forever. And then when he hit 99, switch over to that new card art, and they would have, cherry on top would have been fantastic. Maze also says, but as you mentioned, around the 6-minute mark, we need something special if we collect every base card from NHL teams. So, like, if we collect every base card from Detroit, for example, give me a 92 more. It's Cider that goes up +1 for free every month. So after 7 months, we have 99 overall cards. That would make every card useful, and it would be worth the chase over saving up for fantasy. But all in all, it all comes down to content. If we get content of 5 days back, it would make it so more cards are released, and then they can upgrade cards more often to mint, a term from the old Coffee and Shell episode, more charity upgrades. So Team of the Year, X Factors, Power Icons are worth the chase, and a justifiable grind for them, somewhat equal to fantasy cards. That is a good point. When there's more content days, there's just more cards being released. I would love to go and count. This is probably something Thrash would do. but go back and count just the normal of cards. I can actually look on HUD Hub, I think. It's got to be thousands less, right? Here's the thing. If you were to make a collection-based thing for every NHL team, which I think they should do, they had that in what? NHL, one of my first years of making content. NHL 18, was that the year where you collected an entire team and you got like Wade Redden was the Senators, I think. And if you collected all 15 from the Western Eastern Conference, you got Jaromir Jagr at 99 or Jerome McGinley at launch of the game. I might be misremembering. I didn't play Hut until like NHL 18, really. I could be wrong on that. But if they were to do a collection thing, here's what would need to happen. Everyone freaked out because we lost the massive amount of packs we would get every week. And what people, myself included, did not realize was that the value of each card skyrocketed in comparison. So, for example, if you go back and look last year, 80 overalls and whatnot, you would pull, let's say you got an ultimate pack from Rivals. You got two. You got two ultimate pack in Rivals because you took them untradeable. So you got 40, 80 overall cards, right? Those cards were each worth 1,000 coins. At launch of the game, 77 overall cards were going for 5,000 coins. And obviously there was a big market adjustment because no one understood how the game was going to work, all of that, right? And I don't think it's bad in the sense of the economy of what they did. I think what they didn't understand is that people are addicted to gambling and we want packs because it is a massive dopamine hit. I understand it too, guys. Opening up packs, if I mentioned this throughout all at the beginning of the year, if you are someone that just wants more packs, it's because it's hitting the part of your brain. I'm not going to go all Dr. Huberman on you. It hits the part of the brain, and for some people, it's more than others. I really don't care at all about packs because I have a very distaste for gambling. I had a pretty decent gambling addiction in my early 20s. I'm from Niagara. We have the biggest casino in the country here, and I just got out of it, thank God. But there's a lot of people that don't gamble money, but it hits the nerve of your brain that, it's much like chocolate. When some people eat chocolate, it releases a massive endorphin, then you're just way happier, right? That's just science. So when you have all of these packs, like that's why we liked it so much, but you have to take a look at the overall thing. I don't think it was good for them to remove the massive amount of rewards. I think that they also scuffed the rewards and how objectives and things worked at launch. Remember when we thought that the XP path was the only rewards that they were doing? And I actually think that was the plan. And then we're like, my God, we got to throw in the competitive objective rewards or we're toast, right? But back to my point here. If you were to do a collection-based reward, you have to drastically reduce the amount of cards that we get each week, right? Follow me here. You could complete a team builder card very easily now because you would buy silver cards for like 1,000 coins, which is still crazy. Silver cards for 1,000 coins, even 1,200 coins, right? But if you're getting a 92 Moritz Seider for completing the Detroit Red Wings, those cards, like I'm talking, not even Moritz, or not even, let's say base Moritz Seider, but let's go even more drastic. Ben Sherratt's 78 overall card. That's going to be like 13,000 coins. And people are going to gatekeep those cards, but they have to be the bigger the reward for completing the collection, the more expensive the cards are. For anyone that plays MLB right now, the live series is absolutely torched to a lot of people that can't play the game regularly. I play the game a ton, and I am 400,000 stubs away from Shohei Ohtani. I might not even get him the most expensive card, the one expensive card, until August, right? And I think that team builders would be completely removed. Because if you're going collection reward, completely remove team builders because that's kind of what they are, right? But I completely agree with you that there should be collection rewards. This has been something I've talked about for years now. It adds way more. Every time you open up a pack, it gives you a ton of value. Like you're hunting for Tampa Bay Lightning players. You pull, Connor Geeky or, Gun Calvis. I think I'm saying that name right. And no one cares now. But imagine that was the last card for you to get a 89 overall Steven Stamkos flashback. Would love it, right? And it would completely change the economy and how the game works, but you would have to drastically remove the amount of packs and rewards you get. Because if they kept the same amount we have right now, you would complete those collections so quickly, I think. or too quickly that everyone would just have a ton of those cards. And for the hardcores, awesome. The hardcores are not the most important part of the player base, guys. We are not the most important part. We are the loudest minority. Okay? We make up, if you're still playing the game right now, myself included, we make up 10% of the player base, right? You don't hear from the other 90 that plays the game casually, that is not on YouTube and comments, on Reddit, on Twitch. Okay, you have to understand that, right? And that's what I try to protect against. And I know there's a lot of people in the comments that play the game very casually, but maybe my channel or these videos are the only ones they listen to, right? You have to protect against that. Because how many times do you play against players now, even after Team of the Season, where you run up against, you're newer to the game and you run up against 8 warp speed players? That's what you got to protect against, right? So that was a lot of yapping. But it was fun. I like these discussions. So, anyways, we'll get into more. I'll be back on Sunday. I will immediately do the event video, and then on Monday, I will answer all the comments from this video. Thank you guys again. I really appreciate it. Everyone that still follows me. I know the game is dead in its cycle. We're past the 6 months essentially, so we're almost on the hunt for NHL 26 news. But appreciate you guys. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.